Odyssey with Yendi. Brought to you by Grace, Singer, and IslandNet Services.
The West Indies sunk to a new low in their recent Test series against Australia. Dismissed for 27, their lowest ever total in Test cricket, and the lowest overall in 70 years, was a culmination of a 3-0 series sweep at the hands of the Aussies at Sabina Park. It was embarrassment for Caribbean fans and immediately prompted the president of Cricket West Indies, Dr. Kishore Shallow, to call on the chair of the Cricket Strategy and Officiating Committee to convene an emergency meeting to review the performance in the series. He also pleaded for the help of some of the West Indies batting greats of the past, Sir Clive Lloyd, Sir Viv Richards and Brian Lara. Lead story starts now. Now, before we introduce our guests, let's take a listen to that report done last Tuesday, summing up Dr. Shallow's call for that emergency meeting. Tuesday should have been day 4 of the third test between West Indies and Australia at Sabina Park. But instead, it was a day of somber reflection for Cricket West Indies President Dr. Kishore Shallow. If it hasn't happened already, West Indies cricket heads should soon be locked in an emergency meeting discussing the team's 3-0 series loss to Australia. This after Dr. Shallow issued a statement calling on the chair of the Cricket Strategy and Officiating Committee to convene. But that call is less about just the series sweep, but more about the dubious history of being bowled out for 27 in the second innings of the third test on Monday, the second lowest score in Test cricket history and lowest in 70 years. Again, there is an invitation to past greats Brian Lara, Sir Clive Lloyd and Sir Viv Richards to help in discussing the way forward. Those greats have been called upon before, although the Windies' overall fortunes haven't changed much in the past 2 decades. The president, though, says the call is not just a ceremonial one. The Windies have won only one of their last 10 series dating back to 2023. That win, a 1-0 victory over Zimbabwe in 2023. The Windies batters were always going to be up against it. John Campbell's last Test series before this one came in 2021, much like Shea Hope. Captain Roston Chase had been out of Test cricket since 2023, while Brandon King was in his debut series. Kevlin Anderson was making his Test debut, and Mikhail Louis had played fewer than 10 matches with an average below 20. That was the West Indies top 6 that went up against an Australian bowling attack that is arguably the best in the world, in a pink ball Test match, which was a first for a number of the West Indies players. President Shallow, in his statement, acknowledged that growth will not happen overnight and said the result will cause many a sleepless night. He called the current phase a rebuilding one and said there were encouraging signs, particularly with the ball. He called the batters keen, but said they must now be even more deliberate as they work to improve. The numbers in this series back him up. The Windies only passed 200 runs once in 6 innings, but the bowlers took all 20 wickets in every match played. Pacer Shamar Joseph took 22 wickets at an average of 14.95 apiece, the most in the series. His fast bowling partners, Alzari Joseph and Jaden Seals, each added 13. The Test team is back in action in October as they travel to India. It remains to be seen what lessons will be learned from this painful Test series before their first Test match in Ahmedabad. All right, so we're going to take a break on Lead Story, and when we come back, we've got 2 erudite guests to help us break down this West Indies performance and, in fact, the standard of West Indies cricket as we speak. Stay with us on Lead Story. More after this.
It's the dawn of a new day, And the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation is shaping a future filled with opportunities and limitless possibilities. The government is building the foundation for a thriving tomorrow through strategic billion-dollar investments that fuel industries, facilitate an environment for job creation, and empower communities to rise. We are transforming Jamaica with world-class, sustainable infrastructure, creating a nation where every Jamaican can achieve more and build a lasting legacy. The Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, investing today, building a future for tomorrow.
Save when you charge your electric vehicle with JPS. It's even more affordable than gas. Our Charge and Go network offers the fastest electric vehicle chargers, so you can power up in as little as 30 minutes. With over 39 charging points island-wide, you'll always find a convenient place to shop, eat, work, or relax while you recharge. The Charge Lab app and Charge and Go RFID card make it easy to pay and track your charge right from your phone. Start charge. Learn more at jps.com/charge.
All right, welcome back to Lead Story. I'm Jordan Ford, filling in for George Davis. So this evening on the program, we want to discuss the relevance of West Indies cricket in 2025 from a cultural perspective, as well as from the perspective of being a viable cricket nation. And of course, we should point out that the 27 all-out that we spoke to you about before the break is not the only thing that has spurred this discussion. As we heard in that report, the Windies have been, for the better part of the last 2 decades, in fact, since 2010, struggling. That's 15 years ago. I did some research on that. The Windies, they've played 36 test series, winning only 8, drawing 7, and losing 21. Our guests this evening, Dr. Julian Cresser, head of the Department of History and Archaeology at the UWI Mona, and Andrew Mason, veteran cricket commentator and a radio host, now join us to discuss this and other issues. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on Lead Story.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, thanks for having me. Good evening to you and your audience.
All right, so firstly, let me start with Andrew Mason. Andrew, I know you have done quite a bit of reporting on this, and you have yourself spoken to Dr. Kishore Shallow. But we're trying to set the groundwork, set the framework here for a broader discussion about West Indies cricket in light of that, not only the dismissal for 27, another 3-0 series defeat to Australia, and all that we talked about in the last 15 years, West Indies only winning 8 of 36 test series. Where do we stand now, through your eyes, having watched and commentated on and reported on so much West Indies cricket?
Well, you talk about the West Indies in the last 10 years or so declining, but the decline actually started a long time, Remember in 1980, we did extremely well, that period between 1980 and 1995. But Mark Taylor actually brought a team, Australia, down to the Caribbean, and we lost that series when Richie Richardson was the actual captain then. And if you look at West Indies cricket, we have been on the decline ever since then. And I'm very, very concerned. In fact, I was at Sabina Park. I actually described the 3 wickets that fell to Stark in the second innings, and I was numb. And the reality is that we are struggling. We continue to struggle. And to be honest with you, the late great Tony Cozy, I remember just before he died, he said to me, Andrew, I'm not sure that we are ever going to get back to the halcyon days. We're never going to get back to the pinnacle. And the evidence of what we've seen so far in the last, I'd say, 3-4 years, it looks as if things are getting worse. To be honest with you, I'm not sure that we're going to make it. I'm very concerned. I'm very worried about West Indies cricket. When you look at all the levels, even at the under-19 level, yes, we see 1 or 2 players coming through. But when you get to the test level, our cricketers are not making it at all. We're not batting well, sir. We're not fielding well. We're not catching well. Our bowling today looks pretty okay. And if you ask me, the big problem with West Indies cricket is that we are not handling fast bowling as we used to. In the halcyon days of West Indies cricket, Richards, Lloyd, these guys or hooking and pulling and taking on fast bowlers. If you looked at the series that was recently concluded against the Australians, a lot of our batsmen got out because they played leg side of the ball. They don't like fast bowling anymore. So when you talk about Darren Sammy actually having white ball cricketers come to play red ball cricket, the reality is it's just too concentrated for them. We're not a fit team anymore. And I'm going to stop for the moment. Let me say to you that we are in big, big trouble.
Yeah, I want to get back to some more of those performances, but I want Dr. Cressa now to kind of set the stage for us from the perspective of culture and the force that West Indies cricket used to be in terms of unifying the Caribbean. And we heard Andrew Mason mention the halcyon days of West Indies cricket. Of course, we know that the West Indies won the World Cup in 1975 and 1979. And there was a celebration about that World Cup victory 50 years on just recently. But unfortunately, Dr. Cressa, a lot of when we're looking at the success of West Indies cricket, we're looking back 50 years. There's no recent history for the Gen Zs, for example, to look at with West Indies cricket. Of course, there are 2 T20 World Cup titles, but especially Test cricket to look at and be excited about. Where are we now in terms of a cultural force, West Indies cricket that is, as opposed to what West Indies cricket emerged as in the 1970s and 80s?
All right. Well, I'm glad, first of all, that you mentioned the 2 T20 World Cups, because I wanted to throw that in there. A lot of what Andrew spoke about a while ago does apply to our Test team. And yes, I mean, we have struggled recently, even in ODI and T20 cricket. But in this period, we have produced 2 World Championship T20 teams. We have produced some of the biggest T20 superstars in the game in the last 10, 15 years. And I think that is important in terms of analyzing West Indies cricket. But specifically to your question about cricket as a cultural force. Cricket is not the same cultural force that it was because, a lot of the socio-political conditions have changed. I mean, cricket was very important to my grandparents' generation in the 50s, 60s, 70s because it was paired with, projects of decolonization and independence. It was important in the 70s and 80s as newly independent countries of the Caribbean trying to establish themselves on the world. And sport was a means for us, a medium through which we could do this. We could make a statement to the rest of the world that as new nations, we are, here to take our place at the table with everybody else. We are equal to everybody else. We can compete and succeed and thrive with everybody else. I think a lot of those factors no longer operate. We're 50 years on in terms of decolonization and anti-imperialism. The type of political motivations no longer exist. So, it's understandable if cricket doesn't have the same type of significance to Caribbean people as it did 50 years ago. Nonetheless, it is still important to us as Caribbean people, as individual Jamaicans, Barbadians, Grenadians, everybody. In terms of our sense of pride, in terms of our psyche, we see it with Olympics. Olympics is still, we celebrate our St. Lucian athletes, we celebrate our Jamaican, we celebrate all of the medal winners that are at the Olympics because it still says something about our nation. It still brings us a tremendous sense of national pride. It's very important to our psyche, to our sense of self-esteem. So I do think performance in sport is still very significant in the Caribbean, even if, the type of political motivations have shifted significantly.
Yeah, and with about 90 seconds to go to the break, Andrew Mason, I'll ask you this. With all of what Dr. Cressa said, would it be fair to say that because there isn't that political motivation and that drive behind West Indies cricket anymore, that has been one of the main factors in the decline?
Oh, yeah. Oh, there's no question about that. I mean, look at the crowds. People no longer come and watch West Indies cricket. It is true, and I must compliment the Jamaica crowd for coming out. In terms of the Test match, I was rather surprised by the numbers. But, cricket is no longer talked about as it used to be talked about. I mean, even the old people have actually given up, I mean, so that when we do well, it's almost like a surprise to the Caribbean man now. And I've been in this thing for quite a long time. And, watching the West Indies play in the last couple of T20 matches up at Sabina Park, we are not even competing as we used to in T20 cricket, because I think that's the best format, and we were beaten very badly. And as the doctor said, it is no longer something that we look forward to anymore simply because we've not been successful. And to be honest with you, I think the decline is going to continue. The interest in the Caribbean man will continue to decline. We have got to have our team start winning again. If not, we are in big trouble.
Yeah, I want to get into some of those factors when we come back from this break. Stay with us on Lead Story. We're talking to Andrew Mason and Dr. Julian Cresser. We're looking at the decline of West Indies cricket.
Into becoming a republic or future or choice. The time by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is
6:45. She came in just to look, but then she saw the sign.
50% off everything? No, that's a blessing.
Yes, 50% off the entire store from July 25th to the 27th. From curtains to decor, we have everything to refresh your space. Limited time, limited stock, major savings. Faithful Homes Decor, Mall Plaza Halfway Tree, style your space, save in style.
Save when you charge your electric vehicle with JPS. It's even more affordable than gas. Our Charge and Go network offers the fastest electric vehicle chargers, so you can power up in as little as 30 minutes. With over 39 charging points island-wide, you'll always find a convenient place to shop, eat, work, or relax while you recharge. The Charge Lab app and Charge and Go RFID card make it easy to pay and track your charge right from your phone. Start charge. Learn more at jps.com/charge and go.
All right, welcome back now to Lead Story. Jordan Ford filling in for George Davis. We're talking about the decline of West Indies cricket and the cultural significance of the West Indies in today's day and age. Of course, the backdrop being the dismissal for 27, the West Indies cricket's lowest ever dismissal in Test cricket against Australia in that 3-0 series sweep in the Test series. And of course, the West Indies trailed the current T20 series 2-0. We saw Andre Russell bid the game farewell at Sabina Park. Andrew Mason, I want to come back with you on this because, you know, you've been painting I would say a pretty grim picture on the future of West Indies cricket. And with all that we've described in terms of the loss of the cultural significance, we've heard the likes of the current president, Dr. Kishore Shallow, who is actually quite a young man, whose emergence now comes essentially after the great days of West Indies cricket. He would not have known much about it, you know, but he has made calls that have been made by several before him. What, if any substance do these calls hold? In other words, the calls for the likes of Sir Clive Lloyd and Sir Viv Richards and Brian Lara to lend their support, and the calls for governments, for example, to spend more on cricket. Given all we've discussed, is that just a pipe dream? Can that be realized in this day and age?
Well, I think the president panicked. I mean, he was quite surprised by the score. I mean, like all of us. And I think there was a panic button there as far as President Shallow is concerned. He has been under tremendous pressure. See, one of the problems is that Dr. Shallow will survive because of the current structure when it comes to the election of a president. Once you get the support of, say, 4 boards, and he's got the support of Jamaica, he's got the support of the Leewards, the Windwards, and Trinidad, then he is okay, because there have been calls for him to actually resign. And interesting enough, coming from Dr. Ralph Gonzalez, who back in 2019 would have supported him. As you know, Dave Cameron was the president then, and we saw back in 2019, Dave Cameron lost badly. It was a panic move. In fact, when I spoke to Sir Clive Lloyd, he said that no one had actually even spoken to him about it, and the president was kind of looking for support. I note with interest that the CARICOM leaders, and I can tell you they're not very happy, and I think very, very soon we're going to have a lot of pressure being exerted on Darren Sammy, people have called for him to resign. And I think the president made it worse on my show the other night when he said that the reason why Darren Sammy is being criticized is because he's Sanusian. And a lot of people in the Caribbean have not taken that comment very, very well at all. And I'm interested to see what's going to happen to Dr. Shallow in the next maybe 2 or 3 weeks, because there's a lot of pressure on him. And I expect him to survive simply because of the current structure. But, you know, the reality is that I don't know what will come out of a meeting with Sir Clive Lloyd, with Sir Viv Richards and with Brian Lara. What do you expect them to say? I mean, they have been called upon before and the results have been the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that I pointed out in my reporting as well, that fortunes haven't changed even despite the West Indies going for some of the legendary figures. Dr. Cressa, we've heard the talk come up before about disbanding West Indies cricket and for the nations to go it alone. I'm not sure if those talks should be reignited given the recent performances. But Andrew Mason mentioned something just now about CARICOM leaders getting together. And again, I want you to put some context to this, because we've been, I mean, this whole issue of CARICOM is a widely debated issue of whether or not it is relevant, what purpose CARICOM really serves in the development of the Caribbean. But it's intricately tied to West Indies cricket, because West Indies was actually playing that sort of a role as well. What do you think of it, and will that help? I mean, is there anything that these government leaders are able to do to kind of save West Indies cricket, especially Test cricket, from the doldrums?
Well, first of all, the calls, I think, to disband West Indies cricket now and all of the previous times that they have ever happened are emotional and insular reactions. I don't think people have sat down and thought about the practical implications of disbanding. You know, if all of us as territories would have to compete individually, it means going back to a kind of associate status. West Indies cricket is only surviving now because of the type of revenues that we can get from television rights and appearances in World Cups when we do qualify for them. And all of that money will be gone. We'll be, you know, relegated to competing with the Argentinas and the Nepals and Ugandas of this world. And that is going to spell disaster for us, I think. And I think that therefore there is a lesson there for CARICOM leaders, and not just you know, leaders of government, but leaders in other areas as well. Leaders even at my own institution, the University of the West Indies, in seeing in the model of the West Indies that there is a strength that can come out of regional cooperation. And you know, if we I think commit to that in other areas of life, I think that it can aid our developmental goals in the Caribbean. Now, we can't ask of West Indies cricket to do what regional leaders are unwilling to do, which is, you know, bring people together. That, you know, that commitment has to come from them. To answer the final part of your question, can something be done? Yes, something can be done. There is still, as we've seen, as Andrew pointed out, a tremendous interest in cricket right across the Caribbean. We are hungry for cricket in Jamaica, hungry for good international cricket in Jamaica. You saw that with the crowds coming out. We support winners, and if we have a winning team, I do think that, you know, people, you know, we tend to be in some ways, you know, bandwagonists when it comes to sport. You know, we support winners. And I think what we need in the Caribbean for Test cricket particularly to survive is a kind of infusion of resources at a kind of grassroots level. And that is where, you know, you need a kind of commitment of governments. I've been involved in sport at the club level, at the school level in Jamaica. I see how under-resourced both our schools and our clubs are. And there needs to be that kind of injection of funds. Private sector.
Let me interject just there, Dr. Cressa, because you said that I know you've been involved at several levels of cricket, especially, but we're talking about CARICOM leaders. We're talking about respective leaders in their territories, plus as a force in general coming together collectively to try to help West Indies cricket out. But what really is the true incentive? I mean, we've talked about regional pride and so on, but here it is that we have several leaders who are on different growth paths and so on and so forth. Jamaica is having perhaps a different outlook from Trinidad and Tobago, from Barbados, from St. Lucia, and the resources are split and the focuses of each of those governments are split. Is there any real incentive for these governments, especially now that sport is so commercial, for them to be investing heavily into West Indies cricket?
Well, there's the same type of incentive as there is for investing in any other sport. Now, you might say that some governments may be more interested in, success with their individual territories because they have a kind of more insular idea of development. I'm saying that I think that there is value and worth in regional cooperation, that there is value and worth in continuing West Indies cricket alongside us competing in other individual sports because of the impact that it has on the psyche of the people. It is still one of the very few sports in the entire world that we produce world beaters. And yes, I know right now the test team is dismal and we've suffered and struggled, but as I said, in the last 15 years, we've produced 2 T20 World Cup championship teams. We've produced some of the biggest stars. I mean, the reason why Puran has quit West Indies cricket is because he's a superstar of the global game right now. Yep. And if we say as governments that we're going to invest in track and field and all of these other sports because, it enhances our image in the world, there is soft power to be gained for it. It's part of international diplomacy and foreign affairs. For all the reasons that we've invested in sports for 40 years. There's value in investing in West Indies cricket still. All
right, just about a minute to go. Andrew Mason, I want you to chime in here because another perspective from Barbados, and I mean, you look at each regional territory, do you see them coming together to try to make West Indies cricket great again? Pardon my use of that term.
Well, I think they've got to go beyond the talk. And if you note, Dr. Shallow said only recently that governments in the Caribbean, they've got to get involved